Hey everyone, hope you guys are having a great day, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. So we have an interesting show for you guys today. I've had a lot of requests with all this Diddy stuff to basically do a show and kind of give a baseline for people who are younger, don't remember, need a refresh. Plus, let's just be real. This thing is like the Charlie Day meme where, you know, he's got things all over a board with yarn. It's insane. It's very hard to keep up with. In fact, you know, one of the reasons it's taken me so long to do this particular show in the first place is simply for the fact that it is so difficult to keep up with all the stuff. And it's like, where do you even start? Because there's just so much, right? Now, for those of you guys watching on TikTok, because as always, we got our TikTok family up here. You guys cannot see anything that I put up on the screen. I also will not be paying attention to contents during this. So if you want to, you are welcome to stay and listen. Hopefully you guys learn a lot. If not, you're welcome to jump over to YouTube. The YouTube name is the same on here. It is Just in the Nick of Crime, which for those of you guys on YouTube, we'll address that new name in a second. Just in the Nick of Crime, but you can also go to my website, which is still justinontiktok.com, link in bio. Go directly under my picture, and on the far right under follow my socials, you will see YouTube and you can come on. But the great thing about YouTube is if you're not able to stay for the whole show is you can always come back and watch it later whenever you can. And this is going to be a multi-part series because I don't really think there's any other way that we can do it. Plus, as the saga unfolds, you know how that goes. Now, real quick before we get into the housekeeping stuff that we got to do, let's talk about the new name, because this is the first time I have used this new name, Just in the Nick of Crime, on YouTube. For my TikTok family and my Instagram family, you guys have probably seen it for the last several days. But YouTube, I haven't really done anything here for a while. So real quick, just to let you guys know, is my agent and a friend of mine who is a producer have been on me for a while to get the word TikTok out of my name, because it apparently, having the name of a rivalry, for lack of a better word, platform on other platforms like Instagram and YouTube, it's not good. And the platforms don't like it. So we changed it to Just in the Nick of Crime. It was very hard coming up with a name that wasn't taken on every single platform that I'm on. So I felt that it's pretty clever. That's what we came up with. That's what it is. And that's what it'll be from here on out. Now, the website, justinontiktok.com, is still active because I'm working on building a new website. I already have justinthenickofcrime.com parked. So we're just working on that. Real quick, though, before we get into anything else, let's kind of talk about some of the stuff that I have to do, because Christmas is coming up, right? And I got to do a little shameless self-promotions. So here's the thing. For those of y'all who don't know, because I have a lot of new followers, I think that in the last week or so, I've picked up like 30,000 followers on TikTok. So a lot of y'all might not know this, but I have written 2 children's books, actually 3. The third one's not out yet, but it'll be out before the holidays. The first one is called Boundaries. If you are limited contact, no contact with a family member, this book is a way to explain it to your kids in a way that's simple for them to understand and digest. Doesn't vilify that person, while at the same time teaching your kids what a conditional relationship is, so hopefully they can avoid them, and teaching them how to set boundaries within a family. You know, it's really a great tool, and is the only book like this in existence. The next book that we have out is called Surprises Are Okay, Secrets Are Not. And even though it might be a little harsh, I tell you guys this. I wrote this book so I don't have to do a story on your children. That's seriously why I wrote it. This book is designed to teach your kids that surprises have end dates, secrets are not okay, and that it drives home the point that adults should never be asking your kids to keep a secret, or any kid to keep a secret for that matter. And at the very end of it, there is a question, a Q&A, that basically just says, hey, can you think of some things that you should tell a trusted adult or trusted grown-up, even if someone asked you to keep it a secret? And then there's some jumping off points so that you can have age-appropriate conversations with your child. You'll understand what those points are alluding to, but the kids might not. My publisher put that both of these books are for 4 to 8, but honestly, I wrote them up to go to like 11 or 12. And you can get both of the books on my website, justinontiktok.com, or through the TikTok shop. If you get them as a bundle or you get a hardcover copy, those all have free shipping no matter which platform you are. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't have a ton of them left in softcover. I'm completely out of boundaries in hardcover. I got those on order. So if you want these in time for the holidays, you need to buy them pretty soon, because I can't guarantee once I run out of the stock that I have that I'll get them back in stock before the holidays. So if you want to order those, definitely do that. And then real quick, this is going to be up for pre-order very soon. The new book, the title's going to change a little bit, but it's called The Lost Balloon. It's a book about sharing. Really cute. I'll give you guys more details on that at a later time. But yeah, if you want those, again, when this one's ready for pre-order, The Lost Balloon, it'll be available only on my website until it actually comes out, because TikTok does not allow you to do pre-orders. Now, without further ado, last thing I want to kind of say is, if you are new here to the YouTube channel, you're just coming over, hit that subscribe button. Subscribe is the same as a follow. It doesn't cost you anything at all to do. So yeah, do it. Help support my channel, something free that you can do. And always make sure that you have that, hit that little bell, have your notifications on so you don't miss when I go live. Now, what we're going to talk about here is a couple things. Let's just get right into this. Okay. Let's just get right into this. So we're going to be talking about Diddy today. There's a lot surrounding him. You guys all know that at this point. And so I thought that the best place would be is to kind of give you some background on him, where he is, how he started. But there are a couple things that I want to address prior to us really delving into it. There's only a couple things here. First is, as I said earlier, this is going to be a multi-part series because I don't really see any other way of doing this. So that's just what the case is. Now, if you are my TikTok friends and family, I will not be able to, the chat scrolls too quickly. I won't be able to watch it. So, if you want to say something and be in the chat and have a chance of seeing it, you definitely want to do it in the comments over on YouTube. And what I'm going to do for this episode, and you guys, some of y'all may like it, some of y'all may not, but it is what it is, because it just is. This series is taking a lot of work. I'm happy to address questions at the end of the YouTube show for anybody that's live here, but I'm only going to be addressing questions that are from members and super chats. And it's not trying to be mean, but it takes a lot of time, and so that's just how we're going to do that, at least on YouTube. Other questions can be addressed in TikTok at a later time. The other things that I really want you guys to do as we're listening to this and going through it, this is specifically for YouTube. If there are parts of something that you have heard and you want me to address, whether it is rumor, speculation, or something specific that I say that you would like more detail on, because what we're going to do in this particular episode is really a lot of high-level stuff on a lot of things. So if there's stuff that we get a lot of comments that people are really interested, drop it in the actual video comments, not the chat, and we will look into that, and I will add it, because this series, sorry about the noise, we live in a house, dogs bark. But this series is for you guys, right? So whatever you guys need, whatever you guys want to hear about, that's what we're going to do. And then the last thing I'll say real quick before we delve into it, one thing that we're going to touch on, which I've talked about before, is the East Coast, West Coast hip hop wars. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry. You will have an understanding of it by the time we finish this. But that being said, if you want to get a really good deep dive on this, the favorite podcast episode that I've ever done was called Lost Legends, the assassination of Tupac Shakur. I have linked that in the description of this video. Check it out if you want to. It will give you a lot of information on how Diddy's implicated, which we're going to talk about lightly, and just call it kind of all the nuances surrounding it. That ended up being an episode in and of itself. So that being said, let's just jump right into it. So, hold on, I get my pictures pulled up here so we can get this started. There we go. There's little Diddy. So when we're talking about, let me scroll down to where I was at. Actually, you know what? Before I even get into this, I'm going to leave that picture up. But before I get into this, I think that let's start a baseline here. Let me do this before I get into how he got to where he is. I want to talk about the chronological timeline of scandals and accusations against him. And there's literally 3 pages of it in my notes on this. So instead of doing it in the order of when things were filed, I'm going to do it in the order of things that, of allegedly when they happened, the alleged things and allegedly when they happened. So again, this is going to be very high level, but I want you all to understand kind of what we're dealing with. So that being said, let's just jump right on into it. So in 1990 to 1991, there is an alleged R with Aaron Hall. So basically, this happened in November 2023. An anonymous plaintiff filed a lawsuit which accused Diddy and singer-songwriter Aaron Hall of R-ing her and her friend in 1990 or 91. Now, the incident allegedly occurred after meeting at an MCA Records event in New York. The lawsuit was filed shortly before the expiration of a New York law temporarily allowing lawsuits for older assault allegations that would ordinarily be past the statute of limitations. So what that means, just so y'all know, is that New York did a look-back period for a couple of years that's since expired that allowed people to bring suits for investigation purposes on any assault charges, and there were a lot that were brought during that, and this was one of them. So that was in 1991 for an anonymous plaintiff. Then Joey Dickerson, the Joey Dickerson Neal allegation, she filed a lawsuit in November 2023 as well, alleging that Diddy drugged her, SA'd her, and then secretly recorded that assault when she was a college student. And like in the previous case, this suit was also filed under the temporary New York law that allowed older cases to be brought forward. So now we're at 2. Then in December 1991, there was the City College of New York tragedy. You guys might not know about this one. So basically what happened was Diddy, which we'll talk about more, was a promoter from a very young age, was into this kind of stuff. And so basically there was a fatal stampede that occurred at a celebrity basketball game and concert, which was promoted by Diddy at the time, I think Puffy, maybe just Sean Combs, who knows, at CCNY. Now that event, which was held in a gymnasium that had a capacity of about 2,730 people, basically was overwhelmed, and then 5,000 people attended the event. There were more people, almost double the amount of people that could have been there, should have been there. And the resulting chaos from that led to over 24 injuries and 9 deaths. Because of that, Sean Combs faced multiple lawsuits, and the victims and families of the deceased all filed against him. And if you guys know about the Travis Scott Astroworld incident, it's very similar to that, just back in 91. So we're at three scandals and controversies just in that span of time. Then you have from 1995 to 2001, the April Lamprose allegation. So basically in May of 24, April Lamprose filed a lawsuit accusing Diddy of SAing over 4, as she described it, terrifying S encounters between 95 and 2001. The allegations include 3 incidents of R and incidents of R, and 1 instance where Combs allegedly forced her to take illicit substances that start with the letter. All right, well, it doesn't start with that letter, but sounds like that letter. Then one of the big ones, and we're gonna touch on this a little bit more here in a few minutes, but September 7th, 1996, which was a infamous day in music, infamous day in hip hop. That is when Tupac Shakur was murdered. So for those of y'all who don't know the details behind this, on September 7th, 1996, Tupac was fatally shot in Las Vegas and died 6 days later. In the aftermath, rumors and conspiracy theories began to circulate, which implicated Diddy, or Puffy at the time, for the murder of him. The allegations were based on the ongoing East Coast-West Coast hip-hop rivalry, which we'll also get into in a little bit here, and personal feud between Tupac and the notorious B.I.G., who was signed to Diddy or Combs at the time, and Bad Boy Records, where Tupac was signed to Death Row Records. So the key points of this is that there's a former LAPD detective, Greg Kading, and he claimed in his books that Combs had offered $1 million to the Crips gang members to kill Tupac and Suge Knight, $500,000 for each of them. Now, apparently, there's never been any concrete evidence to support these claims, and Combs has consistently denied any involvement in Tupac's murder. Now, there are only 2 people left from that night who are still alive, basically, and one is Suge Knight, who is currently serving a prison sentence for voluntary manslaughter. That was his plea down instead of murder. He's eligible for parole, I think, in 2034, and a man by the name of Dwayne Davis, or Keefe D. Okay, so Keefe D was the Southside Compton Crips shot caller, and he has been saying for years the same thing that this LAPD detective has said, which is that Diddy offered them $1 million to take out both of them, and he only got paid $500,000. And so Keefe D back last September, almost a year exactly, Keefe D was arrested, and it's come out in writing in legal lawsuits, the same exact thing, that Diddy offered $1 million to take out both of them, and claims that right after the hit happened, Diddy even called up Keefe D and said, "Was that us?" And he was like really ecstatic, really happy about it, and was like, "Yeah, that was us." Okay. So that's really high level. We'll get a little bit more into it, but just to kind of let you know. And then subsequently, after the September 7th, 1996 murder of Tupac, on March 9th, about 6 months later, Notorious B.I.G. was murdered, and there were also allegations. So Notorious B.I.G.'s name is Christopher Wallace, and he was known as Biggie Smalls, Notorious B.I.G., or just Biggie. And he was fatally shot in L.A. on March 9th, 1997. And this event, like I said, was 6 months after Tupac's death. And that led to more speculation and even more conspiracy theories, some of which implicated Combs. Now, the key points to this are that some theories suggest that Diddy might have been involved to profit from Biggie's death, and we can talk about why in a moment. Others speculate it was in retaliation to Tupac. And as with Tupac's case, no concrete evidence has ever been presented to link Diddy to the crime. Rolling Stone at one point published an expose claiming that Biggie wanted out of his Bad Boy Records contract and was working on exit from the label before his death. The magazine also alleged that Diddy capitalized on Biggie's death for financial gain, choosing to put himself on the cover of the Rolling Stone instead of Biggie in August 1997. So let's unpack some of that for a little bit, okay? So there's a lot of rumors and stuff surrounding the Biggie's death, and I'm not going to get deep into that right at this moment. We'll do that in a different live. If you guys want that, like I said, make sure that you guys tell me if that's what y'all want to hear. But he dies right after. Diddy wasn't riding in the car that night with Biggie, which was kind of weird because, he's the producer. There's rumor and speculation that Pac and Biggie were going to patch things up, moving that direction, and possibly Pac starting his own label. Again, that's all rumor at this point in time. But, as soon as Diddy had that song, "I'll Be Missing You," the one where from Sting and the Police, which we're going to talk about in a second, like literally in 1 second after we talk about this, had that out within 2 months. And, with the doves and the white suit, and, he got to keep the royalties of Biggie's music because Biggie was dead. He was signed with them, and that's kind of in perpetuity. So, he had a lot of money that he stood to gain off of. There was motive there. Let's put it that way. If it's true that Biggie was looking at leaving, there's motive there. And one thing I'll tell you too, going into the Pac situation with Diddy is Diddy wanted to be friends with Tupac, and Pac wanted nothing to do with him. Pac referred to him as a corny rapper, thought he was fake, just didn't like the vibes he was putting out, and that pissed Diddy off. So that's kind of a little bit of the high level on that. Then in May 97, I'm putting this in here because there's a controversy for the "I'll Be Missing You" song. Now, while this isn't necessarily illegal, I just like pointing it out whenever I have the chance. So basically what happened is May of 97, 2 months after Biggie was dead, Puffy comes out with "I'll Be Missing You," which is supposed to be a tribute song to Biggie featuring Faith Evans, who was Biggie's widow, and 112. Now, that song was a massive hit, but it also sparked some controversy when it came out. And I remember when the song came out, the first part of it, and this is my favorite part, is that the song heavily sampled the Police's Sting and the Police, "Every Breath You Take," without initial permission. He was so quick to get this out, he didn't get permission from Sting, which led to a copyright infringement issue. And then because of that, Sting was given 100% of the royalties for that song. To this day, Sting makes about $5,000 a day off that song because Diddy or Puffy at the time was so quick to change, to get this out there, Now, also its quick release put a little controversy around it. 2 months after Biggie's death, and it was very successful. It debuted at #1 on Billboard Hot 100. And then despite all this controversy, though, the song did win the Grammy for Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group in 1998. So very, very lucrative song for him. And again, right off the tail of Biggie. I'm not going to suggest anything, but, the conspiracy theory part of me was like, was he already writing this to get it out that quickly? But probably not, just, it's interesting. It's an interesting thought. Then In 1998, you had the Steve Stout assault. So in 98, Combs was involved in an altercation with music executive Steve Stout, who was managing Nas at the time. That incident reportedly occurred over a disagreement about Combs' appearance in Nas's Hate Me Now music video. So what happened here is that Stout basically is alleging that Diddy attacked him with a champagne bottle, breaking his jaw and his arm. Violence, right? Violence. And Diddy has denied causing such severe injuries, but pleaded guilty to harassment and was ordered to take an anger management class. Now, supposedly it was like Diddy wanted to be depicted like on a cross or something like that, I think was what it was about, if I recollect. But, you know, Diddy also denied beating Cassie up. So take that for what it's worth. You know, then that was in 98. Then in 99, there was the Club New York shooting. There's also one that I forgot to put in here that I'll go back in real quick. I can't remember, it was like 95. 94, 95, 96. There was also the shooting outside, I think it was MCA Records. Pac was in New York, and he's always blamed Biggie. I think it was 95. Biggie and Sean Combs for that, thinking that, you know, that they were the reason that he got shot. And he went to his grave thinking about that, and there's speculations and rumors around that as well. But so I forgot to mention that. Then in 99, though, you had the Club New York shooting. So that happened in December. And this is all, by the way, so what we're talking about now, for those of y'all just coming in real quick, is we're talking about all these allegations and all these accusations and lawsuits filed against Diddy, and we're doing it in the order that they allegedly occurred versus allegedly filed. But basically, this is a shooting that occurred at Club New York in December of 99 and injured 3 people. And Combs and his protege at the time, Shine, faced charges related to that incident. Now, Combs was acquitted of this. Shine was sentenced to 10 years. And a woman who was shot in the face has long maintained that Diddy was the shooter. This incident significantly impacted Shine's career, obviously, and his relationship with Combs. So it sounds like, you know, money talks, power talks, and Shine went down for something that Combs participated in as well. Then the latest allegation, which was just filed, I think yesterday or Monday or Tuesday, which was Talia Graves. Now, Talia Graves, it was on the 24th, so it was yesterday. Yesterday, she filed a federal lawsuit in New York claiming that in 2001, when she was 25, Diddy and his bodyguard, Joseph Sherman, offered her a glass of wine that made her lightheaded, dizzy, and physically weak. She alleges that she lost consciousness and was arred by the 2 men while her hands were tied behind her back. The lawsuit also accuses them of recording the assault and showing it to others. Now, the backstory on this is she was allegedly dating somebody who worked for Diddy at the time at Bad Boy Records. And I guess she was there visiting him. They lured her into the studio, and this assault occurred. And even when she begged for them to stop, they wouldn't. So that just came out too. Then in 2003, Crystal McKinney allegation. So this was a former model. She filed a lawsuit in May of 24, which accused Combs of drugging and essaying her at his New York recording studio in 2003. Very similar story to Thalia. Then in 2003, there was a gang R allegation. In December, an unnamed woman, in December of 23, an unnamed woman filed a lawsuit accusing Combs of drugging her and participating in a gang R of her while she was only 17 years old. Then in 2007 through 18, you have the Cassie Ventura allegations. In November of 23, Cassie Ventura, which is who used to date Diddy, filed a $30 million lawsuit against him, alleging a pattern of abuse throughout their relationship from 07 to 18. And those allegations include an R in 2018, years of physical abuse, Combs exerting complete control over her personal and professional life, forcing her to engage in acts with male escorts, an incident where Diddy allegedly had an artist, Kid Cudi's, car blown up because he believed Cassie was dating him. And that lawsuit was settled the very next day after it was filed for an undisclosed amount, like that. He wanted under wraps. And in May of 24, a 2016 video, by the way, real quick before I tell you this part, he denied, for those of you who don't remember, vehemently denied that he ever laid hands on Cassie. And then in 2016, or sorry, in May, a 2016 video surfaced showing him attacking her in the hallway of a hotel. And then he came on and did an apology, which I think has since been deleted, because and to me, it was very insincere. He was apologizing because he got caught. That's all I can think of on that. So that's a big one. I think that led to a lot of what we have now. Then there's the alleged fight with J. Cole. Sorry, the dogs are barking in the background. I can't help that. Rumors circulated about Combs getting into a physical altercation with rapper J. Cole at an MTV Music Award after party. That incident allegedly stemmed from Combs confronting Cole about Kendrick Lamar calling him the king of New York on a track. The altercation was said to involve pushing rather than actual punches. Then in 2015, the UCLA coach incidents. There was this again. We're still going through these incidents with him, and if you guys want to watch on YouTube, you can jump over to YouTube and take a look. But in 2015, there was a UCLA coach incident where Combs was arrested for assault after an altercation with UCLA assistant football coach Sal Alossi. Sorry about the dogs, guys. I don't know what they're going crazy about. Sal Alossi. And that incident reportedly occurred when Alossi criticized Combs' son, Justin, who was on the team, and Combs was accused of grabbing Alossi and throwing a kettlebell at another employee. Charges were not filed, but that incident still made headlines. Then in 2016, you had comments made by Usher. So Usher reflected basically on his time living with Combs. And we're going to talk about Usher and Bieber a little bit more in detail here shortly. But he reflected on his time living with Combs when he was about 13, 14 years old. And during an interview on the Howard Stern show, Usher alluded to a very curious things taking place, including late night to early morning parties with celebrity friends and women who allegedly flirted with Usher while he was still a child. And that's something we can get into more in depth as well. We're going to talk more about it here today, but we can get more into depth on all that stuff as well. Then you have ongoing issues with publishing rights. So throughout his career, he's faced criticism and complaints from various Bad Boy Records artists regarding their publishing rights. People like Mace, members of 112, Danny Kane. They've all publicly mentioned that Diddy has petitioned for control. They've all publicly petitioned Diddy for control over their publishing. And 23, Combs decided to give his former artists their publishing rights, though some, like Aubrey O'Day, claimed that there were conditions attached to receiving those rights. Then in 2024, you had the Rodney Jones Little Rod lawsuit. Basically in February, producer Rodney Jones filed a lawsuit alleging that Combs subjected him to unwanted advances and forced him to engage with S workers. The lawsuit also claims that Diddy regularly hosted S trafficking parties with underage women and illegal substances, implicating record label executives in turning a blind eye to these activities. Then this one's my most favorite one. And I'll get a little more in depth on this. This one I did a video about yesterday. Or no, sorry, I posted it this morning. I posted this one this morning. On August 12th, 2024, a lawsuit was filed by an alleged Sinaloa cartel member. So if you guys don't know who the Sinaloa cartel is, El Chapo heads the Sinaloa cartel. Probably the most powerful cartel in existence right now. And a self-proclaimed member of the Sinaloa cartel, who is currently serving time in Colorado, his name is Alfredo P. Gonzalez. He filed a lawsuit against Diddy and Bad Boy Entertainment in the Southern District of New York, same place where all of these came out. This was in August. Okay, so this is before the arrest, but after the raids. Now, Gonzalez was seeking $666,000 in damages, claiming that Combs had damaged his reputation in the criminal underworld after he refused to assist trafficking minors for parties. The lawsuit alleged that this led to the loss of Gonzalez's substance business contacts. And now, here's the thing about this. This was quickly dismissed because A, you cannot sue for losing money for illegal activities. You just can't sue for the fact that you lost money for illegal activities. You can't. So the chief U.S. district judge, whose name was Laura Taylor Swain, she dismissed the case, ruling that Gonzalez lacked legal standing to sue and that these claims were frivolous. Now, while the lawsuit was substantiated and dismissed, it did add to the context of numerous legal challenges and controversies surrounding him during this period, including allegations of S assault and ongoing federal investigation into potential S trafficking charges. Now, let me give you guys, if you haven't seen the video yet, let me give you just a little bit more of a deep dive on this story because I love this story for Diddy. So this guy's arrested, part of the Sinaloa cartel. And I think that he knew that this was going to be dismissed. I think that he chose 666,000 as a very interesting number. And I didn't say this in the video. I'll let you guys kind of come to that conclusion, but we're going to talk about it here. But I thought that was an interesting number. I think that he knew that it would be dismissed. And I think that it was more to send a message and get all that stuff in writing in a legal like affidavit. That is my opinion. Okay. That is my opinion on it. So that being said, that's a very interesting one. You can go watch the video on TikTok or Instagram if you want to. Then we have the big one on September 16th, 2024. Combs was arrested in a Manhattan hotel after being indicted by a grand jury. The following day, a federal court in Manhattan unsealed charges against Combs for racketeering, S trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. These charges allege that Diddy abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fill S desires, to protecting his reputation and conceal his conduct. So that is what we are 30 minutes into this thing, and those are the vast majority of lawsuits that are brought against this guy. Okay, like the vast majority. Like it's mammoth, right? So now let's get into this a little bit. Let's just start at the beginning, give you guys some background, give you guys a baseline, and we'll go from there. So in the little picture that I'm showing here, that is little Diddy, okay? Puffy, Sean Combs. So Sean Combs was born November 4th, 1969 in Harlem. For those of y'all who don't know, his life was marked pretty early on by tragedy when his father, Mel Earl Combs, was murdered in Central Park in 1972. I think Diddy was 2 years old at the time, 2 or 3. I mean, obviously by math, he's 2 or 3. But I think he was 2. And that loss would ultimately have a profound impact on him. Diddy was raised by his mother, Janice, in Mount Vernon, New York, and she was a model and teacher's assistant, and she instilled in Sean a strong work ethic and ambition that would ultimately end up shaping his future. Growing up in Mount Vernon, he showed early signs of entrepreneurial spirit. By his teenage years, he was already making a name for himself as a party promoter. And while attending Mount St. Michael Academy in the Bronx, Diddy would commute to Manhattan each weekend to work the club scene, organizing events, building a network that would serve him well in the years to come. So he started being who he was at a very, very, very early age. Now, he graduated from Mount St. Michael Academy in 87, and then he enrolled at Howard University in Washington, D.C. He didn't stay at Howard very long, but while he was there, he majored in business. He continued to hone his promotional skills, organizing things like fashion shows and parties, which gained him a reputation as a savvy and successful promoter. However, his ambitions in the music industry led him away from college and back to New York, trying to break into the heart of the music scene. So in 1990, he made a pivotal decision that he was going to focus on the music industry. He dropped out of Howard University and to pursue basically a full-time internship at Uptown Records in New York. And this was under the mentorship of Andre Harrell. Now, Andre Harrell, I'm not going to get into him. He's since passed away, but freaking legend in the music industry, especially for R&B. So, you can look him up on your own if you want. But he was under the mentorship of Andre Hall, and he quickly proved his worth, demonstrating an intimate understanding of music, marketing, and what it took to create a star. So let's talk about how quickly he moved up in these ranks, okay? He is very young, and on Uptown Records, his time there, albeit not long, was pretty freaking incredible for what he accomplished in such a short period of time. So within a year, again, he started for an internship. Within a year, he had been promoted to talent director, and by 92, he was 22 years old, and then he was promoted to the vice president of A&R. Now, during his time at Uptown, Diddy was instrumental in developing and promoting artists who would define the sound of R&B and hip-hop in the 90s, which we all know he played a pivotal role in. He worked closely with Mary J. Blige, helping to craft her hip-hop soul sound. He also played a key role in the success of Jodeci and Heavy D and the Boys, to give a couple examples. However, we all know how Diddy is. We've kind of seen how he is. Because of his rapid ascent and his growing reputation, it led to tensions with Uptown Records. His ambitious nature and increasing influence reportedly clashed with Andre Harrell's leadership. And in 93, in a move that shocked pretty much everybody, Andre Harrell fired Diddy from Uptown Records. He just couldn't deal with it. Despite how successful he wasn't comfortable with things that were going on, and he decided to fire him. Now, this was not a setback for Diddy. Instead, it was actually the catalyst that launched him to become the infamous music scene, industry legend, player, whatever you want to call him. But, he was very pivotal in the music scene, especially back then. So he gets fired from Uptown Records, and he decided in late 93 to to start his own record company. So he founded Bad Boy Records and secured a distribution deal with Arista Records. And this is where Clive Davis comes in. We'll talk about him in a moment. This joint venture would ultimately prove to be one of the most successful and influential partnerships in hip hop history. So basically, by putting Arista already had a big distribution network, and by going through Arista for that, it really helped streamline, especially as a new record company, getting artists out there to the mainstream, things like that. in the days of tapes and CDs and records. It was a really smart move for him to do that. Now, the first major signing to Bad Boy Records was a young rapper from Brooklyn named Christopher Wallace, the notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, effing legend. Combs had heard Biggie's demo tape and was immediately struck by Biggie's raw talent, his unique style. And that signing ultimately proved to be a defining moment, not just for Combs and Biggie, but for the entire landscape of East Coast hip hop. So in 1994, Bad Boy Records released its first hit single, which was Craig Mack's Flavor in Your Ear. That track was a success, helped establish Bad Boy as a label to watch. But it wasn't until the release of Ready to Die, the Notorious B.I.G.'s debut album, which was on September 13th, 94, that really positioned Bad Boy Records as a major player in the industry. So Ready to Die was a critical and commercial success, a triumph. The album was celebrated as being a gritty, realistic portrayal of street life. And then you combine that with Biggie's unparalleled lyrical skills and the fact that Combs was incredible at production. It created a sound that defined East Coast hip hop for years. So singles like Juicy and Big Papa, those were essentially anthems at the time, and catapulted Biggie to just mega stardom and cemented Bad Boy's reputation as basically the hottest label in hip hop. Now, real quick, I don't think we can go further until we touch on Clive Davis real quick. So Clive Davis at the time was the head of Arista Records, and that relationship was also pivotal. And I'm going to start off by saying this. One of the reasons I'm bringing Clive Davis into this is because there's a lot of people who believe, and I'm going to tell you this too, you are welcome to disagree with me. I'm okay with that. If you disagree with me, you can be respectful. I had somebody the other night that was an absolute jackass about it. In my opinion, because I'm entitled to that, just like you guys are to yours. So I don't believe that Clive Davis is the puppet master for Diddy. I don't. We had my good friend Dan Catullo on the other night, who's been in the music industry for 30 years, met Clive multiple times. I talked to my friend Kyler Clark, who's Alice Cooper's personal assistant, who's met Clive a number of times at like Grammy listening parties. And he just doesn't give off those vibes. Now, if something happens and changes where he's implicated, I'll be the first one on here to be like, look, man, my gut was wrong on this. It's just not there. I don't see it. There's no evidence to support it. You can say it if you want. I think that it was a good partnership at the time. And it was a smart move for both of them. So now before I said, the reason I think that is too is it allowed Arista Records to get into the hip hop industry a little bit because they were mainly pop. Arista was mainly pop at the time. So it allowed them to a whole different genre of music, a whole different demographic of music that was really hot in the up and coming, because you look at the 90s rap, 90s to early 2000 rap is considered the golden age of rap. So just so y'all know. But this relationship between Diddy and Clive was pivotal in shaping the landscape of 90s hip hop and R&B. In 94, Clive Davis, who was the president of Arista Records, entered into a joint venture with Combs to create Bad Boy Records. And that partnership was more than just a business deal. It was a mentorship that helped transform Puffy from a talented A&R executive into a music industry mogul. Davis was known for his keen eye for talent and business acumen, and he saw potential in Diddy that went beyond his ability to spot and develop artists. Now, under Davis's guidance, Bad Boy Records quickly became a powerhouse in the music industry. The label's roster included artists like Notorious B.I.G., Faith Evans, who's Biggie's widow, and Mace, just to name a few massive names from that time period. Names that are still big, to be honest with you. Dominated the charts, defined the sound of an era, and Davis provided not just the major label distribution and resources that were crucial for Bad Boy's success, but also invaluable industry knowledge and connections. Because remember, at this point, Clive had been in this industry for decades, right? He knew a lot of people. He was well liked, well loved. That was the case, He basically helped Combs navigate the complex world of music business deals, marketing strategies, and artist development. However, as with many mentor-mentee relationships in the high-stakes world of music industry, in the high-stakes world of music industry, there we go, tensions arose. And in the early 2000s, Combs was very successful as an artist in his own right. He was becoming increasingly confident in his business abilities. He began to kind of chafe under the joint venture structure. He didn't like that anymore. He sought more control and a larger ownership stake in Bad Boy. And this desire for more autonomy led to negotiations that ultimately resulted in Combs buying back full control of Bad Boy from Arista in 2002, which effectively ended any formal business relationship that Diddy had with Clive Davis. Now, despite that business separation, the impact of Clive Davis on Combs' career cannot be overstated enough. His influence is evident in Diddy's approach to artist development, his eye for commercial appeal, his understanding of the importance of adapting to change and to the changing market trends. The Davis-Combs partnership remains a significant chapter in the music industry's history and illustrates both the power of mentorship and the inevitable evolution of business relationships in a dynamic industry. So let's talk a little bit more about the rise of Bad Boy and growing tensions. And this is from 94 to 96, y'all. And again, this is just trying to give you guys a baseline, start out a baseline for this so you guys kind of know what's going on. And we're going to continue to do this with a multi-part series. But following the success of the Ready to Die album, Combs continued to expand Bad Boy's roster and influence. You know, by having Biggie, by having what he had, people were lining up at the door to try to sign with him. So he signed R&B singer Faith Evans in 94, who later married Biggie in 95. He also added 112, the group 112, which helped diversify the sound they had. And during that period, Combs was also making a name for himself as a producer and a remixer. He worked on tracks for a very wide range of artists, including Usher, which we're going to talk about Usher in a little bit, TLC, and Mariah Carey as some examples. His production style, which often featured samples from well-known pop and R&B hits, became instantly recognizable. Kind of like if you think of Eminem, you can listen to old Eminem and be like, Eminem mixed that track. Kind of like that. And highly, highly sought after. However, as Bad Boy's success grew, so did tensions with the hip-hop community, and a rivalry began to develop between Bad Boy Records and Death Row Records, which was the dominant West Coast label led by Suge Knight. That East Coast-West Coast rivalry, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, would become one of the most infamous, tragic chapters in hip-hop history. I've forgotten to change my pictures for this entire thing, so let me cut up real quick because I forgot to change my picture. I was so into this. That is Diddy with Andre Hall at Uptown. That is him starting Bad Boys with Biggie up front. That is him with Clive Davis. We talked about tensions again at Bad Boys. I put that back up. And so now we're going to go with this. The deaths of Tupac and Biggie. So the East Coast-West Coast war, for those of y'all who are too young to know, again, I'll say this. I did a whole podcast episode on Tupac that will give you a lot more. I'm not going to go through and do this again because I already have an episode on it. So I'll keep it high level. But if you want to learn more, I've linked that episode into the notes of this YouTube show. So definitely you can go through and check that out. And I would encourage you to do that. Personally speaking, it's, in my opinion, it's the best podcast episode I have ever done. It is my favorite one. So for what that's worth to you guys. But that being said, the East Coast-West Coast rivalry reached a peak in 1996 and again in 1997, 6 months after, because on September 7th, as I mentioned earlier, 1996, Tupac Shakur was shot multiple times in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. He ultimately died from his injuries on September 13th. And as soon as he was dead, the hip-hop community was shocked, was stunned, and then rumors and conspiracy theories began to circulate almost immediately. A lot of these theories implicated Diddy, Sean Combs, and Biggie Smalls in Tupac's murder, citing the ongoing feud between the two camps. However, no evidence has ever been, it's important for me to say this, that at this point, there is no evidence has ever been produced to substantiate these claims, and both Combs and Biggie vehemently denied any involvement. Now, my personal opinion on this is I believe that Diddy is responsible for Tupac's death. It's not a far stretch for me to believe that he's implicated in Biggie's as well. That is my opinion. That is not a fact. I want to make that very clear, and we can talk about why. I've actually, if you watch or listen to the episode that I pinned, that'll tell you why. But that is my opinion. Okay, that they denied any involvement. Now that situation though took an even more tragic turn on March 9th, 1997, when Biggie was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting in LA. That murder coming, like I said, 6 months after Tupac's, sent additional shockwaves through the music, through the community, or through the music industry, through the hip hop community. And once again, rumors and theories abounded, with some suggesting that Biggie's murder was retaliation for Tupac's, but others saying that it was because Biggie was looking to possibly leave Bad Boy Records, and Diddy didn't want that because he would lose a lot of money by Biggie dying. He retained ownership of Biggie's songs. Now, the official answer is that these tragic events had a profound impact on Sean Combs personally and professionally, because it says that he had not just lost his biggest star, but also a close friend in Biggie. And it says that he channeled his grief into his music. Now, I put that in there because that's kind of what I was reading and what it said, and I think it's important for the sake of trying to remain somewhat neutral, even though I don't believe it myself, to let you guys know that for y'all to define what you want. So then from 97 to 99, as Puff Daddy, he became a solo artist. In the wake of Biggie's death, Combs launched his career as a solo artist under the name Puff Daddy. And his debut single was Can't Nobody Hold Me Down. It was released in early 97 and rose to the top of the charts. But it was his second hit single, which was conveniently 2 months after Biggie died, was I'll Be Missing You, that became his signature song. Now, I'll Be Missing You featured Faith Evans, who was now Biggie's widow, in 112, and that was supposed to be a tribute to the Notorious B.I.G. It, like I mentioned, it had heavily sampled Sting's Every Breath You Take. It was a global hit, top charts around the world, won a Grammy Award for Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group. Just a really powerful song in the time. I mean, and if you were old enough to remember and listening to the radio back in 1997, it was everywhere. Everywhere. It's a good song. You can't lie. It's a good song. Then on July 1st, 97, Diddy released his debut album, No Way Out. That album was a massive commercial success. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, eventually became a certified 7 times platinum album. It featured several hit singles and won the Grammy for Best Rap Album in 1998. The success of No Way Out and Diddy's transition, or Puffy's transition, to a solo artist marked a new phase in his career, because now he was no longer just this behind-the-scenes producer and label executive. He was now one of the most visible and successful artists in hip-hop. And this period also showed him expand his business interests, launching things like the Sean John clothing line in 98. But then we get to the 99-2001 era. And despite his continued success, there were new challenges for Sean Combs, Puff Daddy. Because on December 7th, we talked about this briefly, but we'll get a little bit more into it. But on December 27th, 1999, Puffy was involved in a shooting incident at Club New York in Manhattan. Like I said, that incident resulted in 3 people being injured, and Combs was arrested on weapons charges. The subsequent legal battle was highly publicized and threatened to derail Puffy's career, and he was represented in court by the high-profile attorney, Johnny Cochran, same as OJ, and that trial became a media spectacle. On March 16th, 2001, Combs was acquitted of all charges, but the incident had taken a toll on his public image. So, have y'all ever wanted to know why Puffy changed his name from Puff Daddy to P. Diddy? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. In the wake of that trial, he needed to rebrand himself. He needed to get away from all the controversy, the scandal, the shooting. So on March 28th, 2001, he announced that he was changing his stage name from Puff Daddy to P. Diddy. This name was part of a larger effort for him to distance himself from his past controversies and present a brand new image to the public. So that's why he did that. So now he's changed his name. He's had a lot of challenges, and despite those challenges, despite the things he had been involved in, he continued to expand his business empire and pursue his music career. In 2001, he founded Blue Flame Marketing, which is a company focused on brand strategy and marketing. That move demonstrated that Diddy demonstrated his growing interest in expanding beyond just the music industry. And then in the early 2000s, he began to explore acting. He appeared as a dealer in the film Made in 2001. He had a notable role in the Oscar-winning film Monsters Ball in 2002. And those little jaunts, forays into acting helped further diversify his public persona and career portfolio, and started to help people forget kind of all this bad stuff that was this bad-ish, right? That was behind him. Now, on the music front, he released the album The Saga Continues in July of 2001. And it was not as successful as No Way Out. It still performed well and included several hit singles. And despite this period, During this period, he also continued to produce for other artists, maintaining his influence as a producer, keeping himself well-rooted in the hip-hop and R&B world. Then in 2003, he made headlines for a different reason when he ran in the New York City Marathon. He completed that race in 4 hours, 18 minutes, raising $2 million for children's charities in the process, which now showed another side of him as an athlete and a philanthropist. All of this to help, build this new image and distance himself further away from the things that were happening. As the early 2000s progressed, it became clear that P. Diddy, Sean Combs, was more than a music mogul. He had successfully transformed himself into a multifaceted entrepreneur with interests spanning music and fashion and marketing and entertainment. And this was the foundation that he laid during this period. And it was this foundation that served as the launching pad for the global brand that he would become in the following couple decades. So now let's talk about a couple things that y'all want to talk about. Let's transition here and talk about Usher and Bieber for a second. Okay. So the relationship between Diddy and Usher has really been a subject of, it's been described as both admiration and controversy in the music industry. I can't speak for the music industry. I'm not in it, but I would say there's definitely, it raises some eyebrows, right? But for those of you who don't know, in the early 90s, when Usher was just a teenager, 13, 14 years old, he lived with Diddy in New York City while trying to start developing his career. This arrangement was not uncommon in the music industry at the time. And it was primarily aimed at providing a very young Usher with an immersive training in music performance in the business side of the industry. However, the nature of this living arrangement is what came under scrutiny in following years. In a 2016 interview on the Howard Stern Show, Usher reflected on his time living with Diddy and made comments that really brought some concerns to the forefront and questions about the appropriateness of the environment for a young teenager. Usher had alluded to very quote unquote, very curious things taking place, mentioning late night to early morning parties with Combs, celebrity friends and women who would allegedly flirt with him. These revelations sparked a debate about the power dynamics for potential for exploitation and mentor-protege relationships in the music industry, especially those involving minors. Critics have questioned whether such an environment was suitable for a teenager, regardless of the career opportunities it might provide. And sorry, I lost my place here. The controversies also highlighted these blurred lines between professional development and personal lives in the entertainment world, where networking and social connections often play a hand-in-hand crucial role for career advancement. Now, again, despite these controversies, Usher has maintained that Combs was instrumental in his early career development. He credits Diddy with teaching him not just about music, but also about style, performance, and navigating the business. It's a complex relationship, and it really kind of, I think, underscores the murky waters of mentorship in this industry, where sometimes, and I think that this is the same with Hollywood as well, but it kind of makes you question where the drive for success, overshadows sometimes the concerns for the well-being of young artists, young actors, young musicians, right? It's a little weird. And Usher's gone on and said that he was exposed to some things that probably as a teenager he shouldn't have been exposed to. Now, let's talk about Justin Bieber for a moment. While not directly involving Diddy, the Bieber situation often parallels Usher's experience and reflects broader issues in the music industry. Treatment of young talent, Usher having been through a similar experience with Diddy, played a key role in discovering Justin Bieber and introducing him to manager Scooter Braun. Like Usher's arrangement with Diddy, Bieber lived with Braun during the early stages of his career. This living arrangement, like with Usher, raised questions about the industry's practices regarding young artists. Critics have argued that these situations could create unhealthy power dynamics and potentially expose young artists to adult environments prematurely. In recent years, Bieber has been vocal about the challenges of stardom and the toll it took on his mental health. He has not directly implicated Usher or Braun in any misconduct, but his accounts of the pressures and pitfalls of early fame have been contributed to a larger conversation about the treatment of young artists in the music industry. Bieber's had struggles with substance abuse, mental health issues, and challenges of growing up in the public eye, and those have become essentially cautionary tales about the potential long-term impacts of early stardom and the unconventional living and working arrangements that are often imposed on these kids. They're kind of an issue, right? It's almost like being predatory towards young, vulnerable artists. I do want to say real quick that people are asking, when is Bieber going to say something? And I don't think Bieber's not going to say anything. I think that since the raids happened, it put him in a bad spot. We don't know what he experienced, what he's triggered. We may never know. And frankly, it's not necessarily our right as the public to know. While he is a person who is in the public spotlight, that doesn't mean that we're entitled to every aspect of his life. And so if he wants to make a statement, that's up to him. But he's also a new father. He's trying to live his best life, trying to be a good dad. And so, I'm not going to get into a lot of speculation with Justin Bieber. We'll see what happens. Real quick, before I get into this next part, I do want to address something, which is Kim Porter's book. A lot of people have asked me questions about Kim Porter's book. I've not spoken on it, even though I've been covering this. If you guys are following me on this, you know that I've been covering this pretty significantly. And I haven't spoken on Kim Porter's book because I don't know if it's real. Even the author, when asked about it, said, well, I believe it's real. So you can say what you want and say that you believe it's real. The family's saying it's not. And until I have more clarification, I can't speak on that. So I just want to make sure I address that, because I think I was meant to do that at the beginning of this and I totally forgot. So thinking about that. Now, the next thing that I want to kind of talk about real quick, and I'm going to do this very, very on as high level as I can. And I'm going to, again, reference the link that I'm putting in the bio. Go listen to that if you want more. But I think that you guys can't explain, people can't understand the importance of and significance of Diddy early on and his role that he played in the East Coast, West Coast hip hop rivalry, because he was one of the big catalysts from it. So I'm going to give you guys just a real quick lesson for those of y'all who were too young to know, who didn't pay attention, or just need a refresher, right? So, so the origins of the rivalry, it's a very complex conflict, and it dominated, ultimately very tragically impacted the hip hop scene in the mid 90s. It was everywhere in the news. At its core, it was a feud between two major record labels, Bad Boy Records, which was New York, representing the East Coast, representing Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, and Death Row Records, which was based in LA, representing the West Coast, representing Tupac Shakur, and headed up by Suge Knight. It grew, though, to encompass entire regional hip hop scenes. And it was personified in the deteriorating relationship between two of the genre's biggest stars, Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac Shakur, who used to be friends. And again, I'm forgetting to move this stuff. That's a solo career. That's Usher and Bieber. So I've been very bad about this today. I'm so focused in it. Anyways, so the roots of this can be traced to the early 90s when West Coast hip hop, particularly gangster rap, began to gain significant mainstream popularity. Artists like NWA, Dr. Dre, and Snoop Dogg were remarkably successful. And some of the East Coast artists and fans felt it was overshadowing the birthplace of hip hop, which was New York City. Now, for those of y'all who don't know this, maybe some of you do, some of you don't, but Tupac and Biggie used to be friends. They used to be friends. They met in 1993 and quickly developed a rapport. Both were rising stars in the hip hop world. They bonded over their shared experiences and ambitions. Tupac, who was already established, kind of took on a mentor-like role with Biggie, who was just starting to gain recognition. And their friendship was evident in several ways. Tupac featured Biggie on his track Runnin' in 1993. They would often hang out together when Pac was in New York. Tupac actually gifted Biggie his first Rolex watch, and then they performed together at Madison Square Garden in 94. So they were really good friends. Now, the friendship between Biggie and Pac began to unravel in the late 90s. In late 94. Culminating in a complete breakdown by 95, because neither one were live by the late 90s. And now there are several key events that contributed to this. First, on November 30th, 1994, there was the Quad Studios shootings. Tupac was shot 5 times in the lobby of Quad recording studios in Manhattan. He believed that Biggie and Diddy had prior knowledge of the attack, and although they denied any involvement, that incident marked the beginning of the end of their friendship. In 95, Suge Knight, I need to find this. I had this pulled up. I'm going to get this pulled up real quick for you guys. Give me 1 second. But so Suge Knight in 1995 at the Source Awards, who's, by the way, the head of Death Row, he made a very thinly veiled insult towards Sean Combs, stoking tensions between the labels. Let me get that pulled up. I'm going to read it to y'all because I actually thought this was great. Hold on, bear with me, people. Sorry, technical difficulty. Hold on, I'll tell you 1 second here because it's a great. It was very thinly veiled. So okay, in this street, here's what he said. He said, here's what Suge said. It was any artists out there that want to be an artist and stay a star and don't have to worry about the executive producer trying to be in all your videos on all on the record dancing, come to Death Row. Talking about how Diddy was piggybacking off of his artists, basically. So that's kind of that didn't help the situation. Then in September of 95, Pac signed with Death Row. He had been in prison on unrelated SA charges, but Pac signed with Death Row and aligned himself firmly with the West Coast camp. And then in November 95, there was a Faith Evans controversy. Faith Evans was Biggie's wife, and Pac claimed to have an affair with Faith Evans, Biggie's wife. And that personal attack deeply offended Biggie. Then in 1996, you have what I would arguably say is the greatest diss track of all time, Hit 'Em Up. That was released by Tupac. And it was scathing is an understatement. If you've never heard the Tupac song, Hit 'Em Up, when we get off of this live, go listen to it. When you stop listening to this, go listen to it. It is probably the greatest diss track. Do not listen to it if there's children around. And it was very obviously aimed at Biggie, Puff Daddy, and the entire Bad Boy camp. The song was violent, it had violent lyrics, and personal attacks made a point of no return in the conflict. And I will argue with anybody that Hit 'Em Up is the greatest diss track of all time, followed by No Vaseline. That's my opinion. Now, escalation of the rivalry. Basically, as the personal feud between Biggie and Pac intensified, it became kind of emblematic of the larger East Coast West Coast rivalry. Other artists began to take sides and put their opinions in, and that conflict played out in lyrics, interviews, and at times violent confrontations between rivalry entourages. The media played also a significant role in amplifying this rivalry, often sensationalizing this conflict for ratings and sales. The media attention turned what might have remained a personal disagreement into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Leave it to the media. And as I mentioned earlier, this rivalry reached its apex in 1996 and 7 when, Pac and Biggie were murdered. And the deaths of them effectively ended that rivalry, though. With Pac and Biggie dead, the East Coast West Coast rivalry was no more. It was done. And many in the hip-hop community, and many of the people in the hip-hop community, including Sean Combs and Snoop Dogg, worked to bridge the divide between the coasts in the wake of these tragedies. The rivalry, and particularly the relationship between Biggie and Tupac, continues to fascinate me, but also hip-hop fans and scholars and people in the music industry. And it represents a very dark chapter in hip-hop history, but it also underscores the passion and personal investment that artists bring to their craft. And ultimately, Biggie and Pac are remembered not for their feud, but for the immense talents and lasting impact that they've had on hip-hop music and culture. People, I think, look kindly upon them in whatever way you felt back then. You don't really care anymore. Now, as I said, this right here, I want to show you all this real quick. So this right here on this picture, this is the BMW that Pac was in the night that I did terrible at my pictures, my images today, guys. But this was a picture of the BMW and at the crime scene where Pac was killed. And this was Biggie right here. And you can see the holes in his SUV. That being said, a couple things to kind of share with y'all. we're going to be doing more of these. This is just part one to lay the groundwork on some of the things that we're going to talk about. So as I said before, make sure to drop in the comments of this particular show what you'd like me to expand more in. You can't do it while I'm live because it won't stay there forever, but drop what you want. I don't see where any questions have come up, so we don't really have any to ask on there or to answer on there. But I just want to say that I appreciate y'all tuning in and listening. And we have a lot more of these. I'm going to try to get another one up tomorrow. So again, if you're new on YouTube, hit the sub button. Sub is the same as following. If you're on TikTok, hit that follow button, because we have a lot more of this, and this is how we do these. And remember, if you came in late to this show, this is on YouTube. It is saved. You can go back to the very beginning of it and watch it at your leisure. And even though I pretty much stopped promoting or doing things for the podcast 50 Words for Murder, I will get this uploaded on 50 Words for Murder as well, for those of y'all who want to take it on the go. And all of those things can be accessed through my website, justinontiktok.com. Anyways, guys, I appreciate y'all hanging out. We will see you guys tomorrow with more of this. Bye, everyone. All right, guys, I'm going to hop off for a moment, and then I'll be back on in a little bit. I got to do a couple things, and I'll be back.